Great. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the North County Transit District for July 21st, 2022. Before we begin, I would like to inform members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. You must also register with the clerk by sending an email to clerk@nctd.org with your name or phone number and the item on which you'd like to speak. Let's see, before we begin, gosh, I already gave you that part. Roll call. Our interim clerk of the board, Suhail Rodriguez, will now call roll.
Board Member Rodriguez. Board Member Hinsey.
Here.
Board Member Contreras.
Present.
Board Member McNamara.
Here.
Board Member Desmond. Board Member Gasterland.
Here.
Board Chair Edson.
Here.
Board Member Jenkins. Vice Chair Bhat Patel.
Here.
That is a roll call.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand that Supervisor Desmond is not able to be here today. I believe he's on vacation. So thank you, Suhail, for calling roll. Vice Chair Bhat Patel, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, of course. Put your right hand over your heart and ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Suhail, would you please provide a safety brief and review evacuation procedures?
Yes, Chair. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, Suhail. Are there any changes to today's agenda?
No changes, Board Chair.
Great. Next on our agenda is public communications. Suhail, do we have any public comments today?
Yes, Chair, we do. We have one public speaker, Mitch Silverstein. Mr. Silverstein, are you here with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have
Great.
minutes. Thank you.
3 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Mitch Silverstein, and I serve as the San Diego County Policy Coordinator for the Surfrider Foundation. Surfrider Foundation is dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean, waves, and beaches for all people through a powerful activist network. With 70 miles of coastline to protect, our San Diego County chapter is one of the largest and most active chapters in the world. We're an active stakeholder representing the public in the conversation regarding bluff stabilization and relocation of a section of the low sand track in Del Mar. I'm here today in hopes of finding support from board members regarding our opposition to NCTD's petition for declaratory relief at the Federal Surface Transportation Board. The petition, filed in 2020, is an attempt to circumvent the established environmental review for the Del Mar Bluff Stabilization Project number 5, or DMB5 as it's usually referred to. However, it seems to have been equally prompted by the security fencing debate along the same railroad section, but I'm not here to comment on that today. In our view, this organization's executive director and legal team are asking for carte blanche, not only for NCTD, but for rail organizations nationwide to do whatever they want in the coastal zone without any regard to how it might affect our coastal resources. I'm talking about the beaches we love, the public's access to those beaches, and most importantly, the preservation of those beaches for future generations. As a voice for San Diego County's beaches and the millions of people who use them and depend upon them for their livelihoods, Surfrider finds this position to be unacceptable. Despite Sandag being the applicant for DMB5, not NCTD, and despite the fact that conditional concurrence was already reached between Sandag and the Coastal Commission for the project, NCTT continues to disrupt and disrespect the process by pushing forward with the now unnecessary petition at the Surface Transportation Board. Executive Director Matthew Tucker has expressed contempt not only for the entire review process, but also for the specific conditions that the Coastal Commission set for the project to be federally concurrent. Surfrider believes the conditions are appropriate. For example, the seawalls proposed for rail stabilization will be on the public's beach, not within NCTD's right of way. Based on Chapter 3 of the Coastal Act, which is the established standard of review for federal consistency in the coastal zone, the commission's well within the right to require removal of those seawalls once they no longer serve their intended purpose. Seawalls destroy our beaches. I'd like to remind the board that it was NCD itself back in 2004 who first proposed that Delmar Bluff project should go through federal consistency at the Coastal Commission, and that every Delmar Bluff project since then has undergone consistency review. This was at the onset of DMB2. We'd also like to refute Mr. Tucker's statement that DMB5 is a straightforward rail maintenance project and would
30
cite
seconds.
20 years of expensive bluff stabilization projects, decades of partial bluff failures, and 3 occurrences of trains literally falling onto the beach as evidence to the contrary. Every board member here today either represents a coastal city or represents an inland city or county district with thousands of regular beachgoers. I humbly plead with each of you to look into the matter of this declaratory petition, not only for how it would negatively affect beaches in Del Mar, but also how the precedent set could negatively affect public coastal resources nationwide. Lastly, I make myself available to any board member who wishes to speak about this issue further. I will email everyone with a follow-up with my email and phone number. Thank you so much for your time today and for the important representation you provide for San Diegans in your roles as elected officials and here at NCTD.
Thank you. Sahil, are there any new speakers registered?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, at this time, public registration to speak on this item has ended. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I ask board members to please hold comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Second, when the time comes for board members' questions and comments, please use the raise hand function and wait until you're called upon to speak. We have one closed session item on today's agenda. As a reminder, you must connect via the second Zoom link to participate in closed session. Then at the end of closed session, you'll need to reconnect to the regular board meeting. Before we move into closed session, Sahil, are there any public comments for closed session items?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to speak on closed session has ended. See everyone in closed session. Thanks.
A question? Jewel,
Yes. Jenkins?
Suhail, can you send me the link for the closed session? I don't seem to have that handy.
Yeah, and can you also please resend the link for the regular session because I deleted it after joining the session.
I'll go ahead and send that right now.
Thank you.
And Board Chair Edson, this is Lori, General Counsel. I'll now take the board into closed session. We do have one item as our board chair stated, and this is pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1. This is conference with legal counsel related to existing litigation in the matter of Velasco versus NCTD.
Thank you, counsel. I will see everyone with that. I'll see everyone in closed session. Dale, could you please let me know when everyone that should be back in this meeting has arrived?
Will do, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Quorum board chair.
Great. Ms. Winfrey, are there any reportable actions from closed session?
No, Madam Chair, I provided the board with a status update and received some guidance from the board regarding this matter, but there's no reportable action today.
Thank you very much. There are two presentation items on our agenda. Damon Blythe, Chief Operations Officer, Bus, will review item 2, an update on the Breeze, Lift, and Flex bus operations. Damon?
Good afternoon, board chair and members of the board. Yes, today I'll be providing you with an update on the Breeze, Lift, and Flex bus operations. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just a little background history on this. So we transitioned to contracted bus operations in 2010. Since we contracted to bus operations, we've had 2 contractors. First Transit was the first one from July 2010 through 2017, and MV Transportation is our current provider. They started in 2017 to the present day. There's a small team of NCTD employees that manage the contractor performance. The contractor is responsible for providing parts, supplies, and labor, and NCTD provides the rolling stock, the non-revenue vehicles, maintenance and operations facilities, fuel, and most of the utilities. The base term, 7 years of this current contractor with MV, is set to expire on June 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. So there were 3 overarching strategic initiatives related to Breeze, Lift, and Flex that were outlined in the fiscal year 23 budget document. The first was Breeze speed and reliability improvements. These are a series of improvements made in conjunction with local jurisdictions on our 10 busiest routes to the local roads, intersections, traffic signals, and other possible improvements to enhance the speed and reliability of those routes. Those improvements will result in more frequent service, but with more frequency comes more flexibility in how the trips get performed. And in the case of possible service disruptions, like traffic, high passenger loads, and accidents. The flexibility requires us to have a high level of coordination between multiple parties, including the district, the city, any law enforcement or emergency services, and the folks that are actually driving and supervising that service. The next initiative is the zero emissions bus transition. So we are adding zero emission buses to our fleet. We have 6 battery electric buses arriving between October and December of this year. We have 8 fuel cell electric buses arriving late summer of next year. And we also have a grant award that we're waiting to hear back on that may award us between 17 and 42 more fuel cell buses. 21 of those would arrive late summer of 2024, and possibly 20 more would arrive in late summer 2025. Both of those new bus types require extensive training for the mechanics, the servicers, operators, road and maintenance supervisors, as well as dispatchers. And providing that high quality, extensive training to all staff will ensure that the fleet is not only properly maintained and operated, but the rollout of that technology results in minimal disruption to our passengers. The third initiative is the mobility as a service. So mobility as a service has been identified in regional and NCTD studies as a ridership generating service alternative to fixed route bus service in certain markets. NCTD intends to be a microtransit operator in that overall mobility as a service umbrella that we roll out. We're currently in procurement for microtransit operating software. That procurement is expected to be awarded in the fall. The first zone that we're planning on requires 4 to 6 vehicles operating all day, 7 days a week. That requires at least 11 operators to cover that span of service. And mobility of the service is another type of service that requires to have a great deal of flexibility, coordination between multiple parties, and likely, in order to be highly successful, a high level of control. So because the, next slide, please. Because the base term of the agreement with MV is expiring in a little over 23 months, there's three alternatives we have to consider moving forward. The first alternative is extending the current contract. The agreement with MV does contain a single 3-year option that NCTD can exercise, which would bring that expiration date to June 30th, 2027. The second option is to let the base contract with MV expire. And in the meantime, we would issue a new request for proposals for a new contract with service slated to start on the expire date of the current MV contract. And the third option is to resume direct management of the operations maintenance of Breeze, Lift, and Flex. Next slide, please. So I'd like to transport the board back to 2009 when we were contemplating the decision to outsource bus operations. At that time, we were trying to address the existential financial threat that we had looming in front of us, trying to correct a sizable structural fiscal deficit, trying to even maintain basic service levels given the available funding at the time, and also trying to avoid significant service cuts and workforce reductions during the Great Recession. If you look at that as compared to today, as I said before, we have some initiatives that we're trying to roll out: the Breeze speed and reliability improvements, mobility as a service, and the zero emissions bus rollout. But we're also looking to enhance our use of technology to support our daily work here at the district and also improve the customer riding experience. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. So as I said, in 2009, this slide is from a presentation that was given to the board in July of 2009 by Booz Allen Hamilton and Robert Koch Consulting. This was when the board was considering alternatives. So the projected fiscal deficit beginning in FY 2011 was caused in part by the Sprinter coming online with no dedicated source of funding, combined with the Great Recession that reduced projected sales tax revenue from 52 million down to 37 million. In addition to those two issues, there was already a large capital project backlog in fiscal year 2009. So as you can see, NCTD was facing significant future deficits if the service remained in-house under the existing business model. And even when you started looking at reductions in service or major reductions in employee pay, there was still a significant future deficit remaining. So in July 2010, NCTD outsourced bus operations and maintenance as a result of that Great Recession. Next slide. So things look a little different now. The expectations of customers now, such as service quality, climate change, equity, and social justice, are vastly different than in 2009, and they necessitate the district to have more control over the day-to-day operation of the buses. NCTD has enacted significant financial reforms that have allowed us to eliminate the structural deficits. And as you can see, the operations budget is now balanced for the next 5 years. In addition, instead of paying debt and pension liability out of the operating budget, those are now slated to be paid out of our net assets. And we have a projected net asset balance of over $10 million after those payments are made. Next slide. So on this slide, we performed a SWOT analysis of our current operational model. First, let's go to the strengths. You contract out service to cut costs and control financial escalation. Some 70 to 80% of the cost of a transit system is usually labor. Next, if we go to the weaknesses, contracting is somewhat inflexible. Any major changes require negotiations and contract amendments, and sometimes approval from outside parties. In addition, you don't have direct control of the operation. All of your communication goes to the contracted leadership and then gets filtered to the frontline employees. So the message can sometimes get a little lost in translation. This makes it difficult to control the message and the culture. In the area of customer service, the contractor is not currently achieving performance standards. We've had some periods of good performance, but overall the number of complaints is higher than the district standards based on ridership. This model also results in an inefficient management structure because in order to ensure you have adequate oversight of the contracted staff, you need to have another small staff of folks at the district equally qualified to make sure that the contractor is performing to the standards agreed to in the contract. If we go to opportunities, as I said earlier, there are potential savings with the contracted service provider model. In certain labor markets, the contracted employees can be paid less than directly hired staff and often have lower overhead costs due to the size of the total contracted workforce and the buying power of the contractor. In addition, the contracted staff usually don't have a pension, which can result in the further cost savings. And finally, if we go to threats, due to inflation, all costs are rising. In addition, we are in a very, very difficult labor market right now. The contractor is having extreme difficulty in attracting staff due to wages and benefits. The current contracted staff workforce is understaffed by 50 operators, which is 17% of our total operator staff, and 15 maintenance staff, which is over 21% of our maintenance staff. As part of the cost savings, NCTD initially benefited from, the health insurance costs for contracted staff are higher than costs for directed staff. And in addition, despite prior wage increases, some wages are still uncompetitive with the local market. And I'll touch on that in the next slide. But in order to attract staffing, despite the fact that we're contracted out, NCTD is going to bear the additional cost for those increased wages and healthcare because that's not part of the financial model any contract is designed around. The temporary service reduction that we put in place in April is a direct result of these shortages. It reduced the number of trips that we cancel on a spur of the moment basis, but it's also impacting our ability to grow ridership. Customers want more frequency and greater reliability than what we can currently offer. And these staffing issues are also placing constraints on those strategic initiatives. Without additional staff, we can't increase service, we can't implement microtransit, and we can't adequately train staff on the new ZEB fleet to ensure that reliable service that we're all seeking. Next slide, please. So we did reach out to our neighboring transit agencies, and as you can see, our current starting wage and our current top wage are not competitive with other local transit agencies. In addition, they're not competitive with other driving jobs in the area. We've seen Amazon delivery drivers offering anywhere from $20 to $22 an hour to start, or driving a garbage truck, which is offering $26 an hour to start. Next slide. So that 5-year plan I was talking of earlier, how do we achieve that 5-year plan? We have several areas that we're going to have to focus on. First, we need to significantly strengthen our recruitment and retention program. It all starts by getting more people in the door and keeping the employees we already have. In our discussions with the operators and other frontline staff, a common theme we hear is the feeling that when we contracted out, these positions were no longer looked upon as a professional career and now feel more like a job. And we need to fix that impression. A study was just released by the Transit Center this month. It's titled Bus Operators in Crisis, and it was also covered by the Bloomberg News. In it, they cited several difficulties in attracting new entrants across all bus transportation companies in the US. Some of those constraints were compensation, safety, work hours and scheduling, and outdated job requirements in the hiring processes. Obviously, some of those are easier to fix than others. We've already started focusing on the work hours and the scheduling, as well as compensation, and we do intend to focus on some of those other areas of possible improvement. Second, we need a strong and established customer service focused culture. In addition to those issues that I already mentioned, that study also suggested improvements to workplace culture and facilities as a way to attract operators. The relationship between frontline and management staff is very, very important. That frontline staff wants to feel heard and give input to the decision-making process. Building culture is most effective when you have a direct relationship with the employees. As a contract oversight agency, it's sometimes difficult to build that culture and relationship with the frontline employees due to the contractor model. If we can improve how these employees feel about where they work, we can also start to improve the relationship between the employees and customers. So how do facilities come into the question about culture? While these two may not seem related, some of it comes down to the appearances. The entrance of the building. So in other words, does the building entrance to the operations building that the operators use present the same message to the employees as the entrance to the main office? And the appearance and quality of employee break rooms and other facilities can do a lot to drive employee engagement and employee happiness. Improvements to our operator facilities are going to be looked at as part of the capital improvement program. And third, a sustained commitment to training and workforce development. All of the strategic projects we have coming down the road require extensive training to be successful. I'm going to focus on just one. The battery electric bus project alone is akin to training a plumber how to be an electrician. All of our mechanics know how to work on an internal combustion engine fueled by compressed natural gas, but the maintenance and repair of a battery electric bus requires a whole new set of skills. Thankfully, those fuel cell buses on order still rely on compressed gases on the roof, but once you get to the fuel cell, it's all back to electricity. So we've got to really focus on training and workforce development if we're going to make this work. And fourth, once we've completed all these steps, it's time for the rubber to meet the road. Those zero emission buses, mobility as a service, and the enhanced Breeze service will enhance the service we provide to our customers, but we're only going to get there if we could accomplish those other three things. Next slide, please. So NCTD is going to finalize our evaluation of these three strategic alternatives over the next 2 months, and we plan to come to the September board meeting with our recommended alternative. Next slide. And I'm available for questions.
Madam Chair, your mic is muted.
Excuse me, everyone. Thank you for that excellent presentation, Damon. Director Contreras.
Yes, I want to thank you as well for the presentation. It is very thorough. I have just a few comments in regards to what our transit centers look like. I'm going to refer to the one that I'm most familiar with, which is the Vista Transit Center. When it comes to our Lyft riders, I have a concern that they are not being provided with adequate shade. As we continue to, go along the climate crisis route, the temperatures are just extremely hot. And so I'm concerned that we're not providing enough shade for individuals who are waiting for their various modes of transportation. And at the Vista Transit Center, and particularly after Platform 9, there is no shade whatsoever. And unfortunately, it's in an area where the city hasn't really taken initiative to install a lot of tree canopy. But in particular with Lyft and Flex, individuals, who maybe have any mobility issues or have to overcome mobility challenges, I think it's really important to provide shade. And concurrently with that, right, are bus operators who are working, very hard, trying to make sure that they get, their routes accomplished in time. I think when we're talking about a capital improvement program for our facilities, we want to ensure that both the public and our employees have a place to rest where it's shaded. And if it could be a little bit of green space, I see individuals, taking a smoke break and there's not, place for them to dispose of their cigarette butts. So, I just want to take that into account when we're talking about how to improve our facilities. The more that we can improve our transit centers, the more people can, enjoy being there. And that's for the public and for our employees as well when they need to take a little break. But outside of that, thank you so much for the information. And I look brightly to the future for any kind of upgrades and updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Contreras. Before I move to Board Member Jenkins, I just want to ask Suhail quickly, do we have any public comments on this agenda item?
No, we do not, Madam Chair.
Great. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Director Jenkins.
Yes, couple questions. So why do you feel we would be able to recruit employees better than the contracted situation?
Well, if they were to become employees of NCTD again, we have a couple of employment perks that the contractors don't necessarily have. One of those being a pension, the other one being lower healthcare costs. We can attempt to buy down the healthcare costs on the contracted side, but implementing a pension is a lot more difficult in that situation. And also, there's sort of a brand recognition, right? When you tell people to come drive the bus, they naturally associate that with NCTD. And when you start talking about sending them to a contractor, that message gets lost a little bit because it's not entirely clear to the riding public that the people that are hired to drive the bus don't necessarily work for NCTD.
Okay. I think a huge asset that we have, when you were talking about on one of the slides, number 9, I guess it was, about the customer service and the focus on culture and all that. I think a huge asset that I think back to is we've had some employees once a year where we've acknowledged their years of service. And when, can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. When we listen to those employees and their love for what they do and their positive focus on customer service, it seems like you might want to utilize some of them for training to share their feelings as to being drivers in a different capacity. I just think that's a huge asset we have. And then question I have, you talked about the service level, that we expect. Can you summarize why you feel we can perform that? We have a high level service that we expect, why you feel we would be able to perform better with our own employees versus the others?
In terms of, you mean the quality of service?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the quality of service, it goes back to that messaging and that relationship between the front lines and the management staff. Right now, our messages to the frontline staff get a little filtered through contracted staff. Obviously, the contractor has they still have a priority on providing service to the customers. They have a slightly different priority in life than we do. And so it's a little bit easier for that message to get slightly lost and the contracted staff, as opposed to our ability to directly message and influence sort of the day's direction from the district's point of view.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I know from past discussion with our executive director and feedback that has been shared publicly that staff has been evaluating the bus business model for some time. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to have this preliminary briefing before the board is asked to consider adopting a change to the business model. So thank you again, Damon. I'm sure I will have plenty of questions, and as will the board, for our future discussion, including questions relating to budget impacts. Is there any additional information board members might like to see in future presentations? Seeing no hands raised, I'd also like to thank board members Contreras and Jenkins for their questions and positive comments. Oh, yes. Board member Jenkins, I see your hand up.
I was slow. I think trying to improve the level of service is really important, but I think there's a huge financial component of this that I know you're going to thoroughly research, but I think that's a big part that we need to make sure we're all completely informed on, because for the reasons you specified, why you changed X number of years ago, and now we're going to go back to that same model, which wasn't working then. I want to make sure it's fully analyzed. That's all.
Thank you for that. As this item was informational only, there's no vote required. So next on our agenda, Chris Orlando, Chief of Planning, Marketing, and Communications, will review item 3, an update on a program that is near and dear to my heart, the Youth Opportunity Pass, or YOP, if you're collecting acronyms. The YOP pilot program provides no-cost transit for those 18 and under. There's been a significant interest throughout our region in this program. I've certainly been hearing a lot of positive feedback from my community. I'm very interested to learn how this program has impacted youth ridership system-wide. I'm sure you are too. Chris, could you fill us in?
Thanks very much, Chair Edson. First slide, please. As Chair Edson noted, the program Youth Opportunity Pass was developed as a part of SANDAG's Social Equity Working Group in conjunction with the development of the 2021 Regional Plan. It's funded through SANDAG with participation from the County of San Diego. And as Chair Edson noted, it provides free fares to youth aged 18 and under on NCTD and NTS services. It's currently funded through June 30th, 2023. Next slide, please. Here are the details of the program. As I said, it's youth 6 to 18. Those 5 and under ride free with a fare paying adult. It includes Breeze, Sprinter, Coaster, Flex, and NTS bus and trolley. We ask that youth use their Pronto card or their youth account within the Pronto app and tap and ride to access the free fares. It's available to youth with the physical Pronto card or through the Pronto app. So we wanted to provide just an initial summary of some of the results of how the program is doing. Before we share the numbers, I wanted to encourage the board to keep a few things in mind. One, it's very, very early in this pilot program, so we're only 2 months into the program. So these results are preliminary. Look at the progress. Second, they come at a time when we do see some seasonality in our ridership, both in terms of the summer months where ridership changes significantly from the rest of the year. And these 2 months also cover when school let out for the summer. So that also would impact ridership. That being said, let's go to the next slide and we'll share some of the ridership numbers with the board. So what you see here on the left is system-wide total youth riders. So this number reflects the number of unique taps by a youth rider with their Pronto card or app. And so you see in April, we had about 2,400 unique youth riders that use the system. And that increased in May to a little below 4,500 and then almost 6,000 in June. So that's a pretty significant 145% increase in the number of unique youth riders that are using the Pronto system. And then the graph on the right shows how much those riders access the system. So ridership. And just a note about this is measuring Pronto usage. So we're looking at the number of taps either through the Pronto card or Pronto app. It's not necessarily equating to raw ridership because it does require the use of that tap or the scan of the barcode. That being said, you can see that in April to May, we had about a 75% increase in that youth ridership. So almost 32,000 to a little over 56,000. And then it did come back down a bit in June, which we attribute to school letting out and there being fewer riders using the system to go to school. But June was still about 33% above the May or the April number. So still really strong results. We're interested to see how July and August come. So next slide, please. We'll look at by mode how we're doing. As you can see, it was a pretty substantial increase in number of riders across all modes. On the Breeze, which is where most of our youth ridership occurs, the weekday averages went up significantly from April to May. And again, they came down a bit in June, reflective of school letting out for the summer, but then also increased on the weekends as well. On the Sprinter and the Coaster, it's more modest ridership by youth. But interestingly, you see that the weekday average has increased steadily month to month, and the weekend average has gone up significantly, an indication that youth are now not just using the system to ride to school, but are using it to go other places, which is one of the hopes of the program, that we increase mobility for youth around the region. So that appears in these first 2 months to be happening to some extent. So that's great. Next slide, please. Wanted just to do a few reminders to youth and parents that we want youth to ride, but we also want to make sure that youth ride safely. So our staff is trained and focused on keeping the system safe, and there are a number of steps we take to make sure that youth and everyone are safe as they ride the system. We encourage youth to be familiar with the system before they ride, and to plan ahead so that they can ride confidently. Also, it's also always a good idea to ride together when possible. We conducted before and as we launched the Youth Opportunity Pass, a lot of outreach to schools and through community-based organizations to make sure there was both high awareness of these safety steps, but also about the Youth Opportunity Program in general. So that outreach occurred in May, and we will be reactivating that outreach as we get ready for the start of the school season in this coming August. So we're gearing up right now to reinvigorate that outreach again, both in terms of getting those youth cards into the hands of youth, but also making sure they're aware of how to ride the system and how to ride the system safely. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll take any questions the board might have.
Thank you. I'm excited and impressed by the increase in the system-wide youth ridership. You kind of like head faked us into thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible news, but it seems good to me. Before we move to board comments or questions, Suhail, do we have any public comments on this agenda item?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Great. At this time, public registration to speak on this item has ended, and I will take board questions. Board Member Contreras?
Yes, thank you. I just think, along with our chair's comments about how exciting this is, I am right there with you, Chair Edson. It is incredible, as someone who tries to utilize transit, at least on a weekly basis. I'm not at daily basis yet, but weekly. I am seeing just a huge amount of our youth super excited to ride these different modes, whether it be the coaster or, the Sprinter or the Breeze. And I do see a lot of youth riding it in groups, and it's incredible. And I want to say that this is such an important step to creating mobility freedom for our youth to be able to connect to different opportunities, especially in a time where if you're a youth, unless your parents can buy you a car, it's actually really difficult to afford a car, right? We're in a situation where even used cars are expensive and interest rates are super high. And most of the time, youth who are going to be trying to purchase a vehicle maybe don't have credit, right? And so we're really providing a huge option and choice to our youth. And I think it's going to pay dividends in the future, not only for us to continue to increase our ridership on these different modes, but just in general, because our youth won't be forced to either have a car or, not have other options. They're going to be able to really express themselves throughout the region, and hopefully, more and more of our youth learn about this. But this is just incredible. And I really appreciate the opportunity to get an update. And I'm really proud of this board for taking an early stance on pushing for the Youth Opportunity Pass. As we see, it's really made an incredible difference in our region. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Contreras. I think that the other acronym that breaks down for Moss is mobility as a superpower. So I see that Director Jenkins' hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. Question, maybe you can refresh my memory. Where does the foster youth that age out past 18, where do those numbers, which program is that in? Is that in this one or is that a different one?
It would be separate, and it just started July 1st, so we don't have numbers yet from that usage, but we'll have that in the months ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Hensy.
Thank you. Yeah, this is such an encouraging program. I'm curious to know a little bit about how we educate exactly the kids in the school who we're wanting to see use this program. And I know that this is just a pilot that's set to end in the summer of 2023, but perhaps there are things that we can do that will help us learn how to best reach kids, educate kids, and teach them how to use transit to get to and from school and the places that they want to go, even when it's not free anymore. Hopefully we can find a way to make it free for the future, but yeah, I'm just curious to know some of those details.
So when in the months before the launch of the Youth Opportunity Pass, so we conducted direct outreach to schools and educators, providing them with, there was a strong push to make sure that the youth had the Pronto cards in their hands so that they could access the free fares when they were available. So we did that outreach directly. Sandag and the region also did outreach through community-based organizations to make sure that the youth that they interact with were aware of the program and had the cards and knew how to ride. We are, as I said, reactivating that. We had a before the school year ended, we did a webinar with all of the schools in the districts in our service area and invited them to, both walk through the Youth Opportunity Pass, but also an overview of the system as well. We're going to do that outreach again as the school year gets underway here in August. So we have pretty good dialogue with the schools on a regular basis, particularly at this time of year when they're planning the new year. We make sure that outreach not only is going to the schools and the teachers, but gets through to the students as well.
Yeah, that's so great. I'd love to see even some field trip templates or something that we could provide teachers with to show what they could do with their classes for free this year. So thank you.
That's a great idea and a great comment. I will say that I personally reached out to CBOs in my community, and I explained the program and got them in touch with Chris and his team so that they could receive Pronto cards and or have staff come in and present to them at events or to their staff so that they could distribute it with and explain to parents and whatnot and get the kids riding. So it was very well received, and I encourage you, Sandag may not have been in communication with all of the myriad CBOs within your community, because we all have a lot of small safety net as well. So I encourage you to reach out to your local CBOs. This information was also informational with no vote required. So this brings us to the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting of June 16th, 2022?
So moved. This is Hensy.
Second, Bob Patel.
Motion by Hensy, second by Bhat Patel. I saw the hand raised of Director Contreras. Were you trying to get in there on that motion?
Yeah, but I got beat, so it's all good.
Okay. Sorry, please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Board Member Gastelum,
Aye.
Board Member Hensy,
Yes.
Board Member McNamara,
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez, Board Member Desmond, Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Chair,
Yes.
Board Member Contreras,
Aye.
on the motion of Board Member Hensy, seconded by Board Bob Patel, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 16, 2022. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Board Member Contreras, you have another opportunity. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the special board meeting of July 12th, 2020?
Yes, I move to approve the meeting minutes, the special meeting. Thank you.
Motion by Contreras, a second by Edson. Madam Clerk, could you please call the vote?
I apologize. I didn't hear the second.
It was Edson.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bob Patel,
Aye.
Board Member Gasterlin,
I'll abstain because I believe I wasn't at that meeting.
Board Member Hinsey,
Yes.
Board Member McNamara,
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez, Board Member Desmond, Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Chair Edson,
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Chair Edson, to approve the special board meeting minutes of July 12, 2022, motion passes.
Thank you very much. There are 15 items on today's consent agenda. Suhail, have any members of the public requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any board members who wish to pull any consent items? Seeing no hands raised, may I have a motion to approve consent items 4 through 18?
So moved.
Motion by Gasterlin. May I have a second?
Second by Bob Patel. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joel.
Thank you. Second by Bhat Patel. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Board Member Gasterlin,
Sorry about that. Aye.
Board Member Hinsey,
Yes.
Board Member McNamara,
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez, Board Member Desmond, Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Chair Edson,
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Member Gasterlin, seconded by Vice Chair Bhat Patel, to approve consent items 4 through 18, motion passes.
Thank you. There are 2 other business items on today's agenda. Lillian Doherty, Director of Planning and Development, will review item 19. This item represents one of my priorities as chair, which is to increase engagement with our communities in order to enhance their quality of life and gain their support for increased transit operations. Lillian, the floor is yours, and apologies for needing to learn your last name.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Next slide, please, Suhail. There are presently 3 standing committees, which are regular and recurring, established under board policy number 3. For your consideration today, staff recommends the establishment of an ad hoc committee, which under board policy 3 may be appointed by the board if there is a need that arises to accomplish a specific task. Next slide, please, Suhail. The ad hoc committee we are proposing today would study and evaluate rail-based quality of life improvements. We are in a unique time where federal and state agencies will make available unprecedented funding opportunities. And we have also heard from our community stakeholders seeking guidance and expressing a desire for improvements to be made along the rail corridor, which would better their communities, advance their active mobility goals, and improve their quality of life. Staff recommends the formation of an ad hoc committee that would discuss and evaluate the regulatory framework guiding approvals for rail-based improvements, focusing specifically on wayside horns, quiet zones, and grade crossings. An ad hoc committee would progress community goals by leading a regional and programmatic approach to identifying opportunities for collaboration, streamlining, and funding. Next slide, please. If an ad hoc committee is approved today, the committee would follow the structure and framework established in Board Policy 3 with 4 members, including a chair and vice chair. The committee would review guidance and discuss alternatives and approaches. However, any formal decisions or actions would be brought to the full board for review and action. An ad hoc committee would be subject to the Brown Act rules, and all meetings would be noticed and the public provided the opportunity to comment. Staff would work with the committee within the parameters set by Board Policy 18, which describes how NCTD supports locally led efforts to provide quality of life projects, such as wayside horns, quiet zones, and grade crossings, through the engineering and design, construction, and operation and maintenance phases. Next slide, please. We are proposing and recommending that the board consider the following structure and members. As committee chair, board member Contreras. As the vice chair, board member Hinsey. As participating members, board members Bhat Patel and Desmond. Next slide, please. With this in mind, the staff recommends that the board approve the formation of the ad hoc board committee to evaluate and discuss opportunities for quiet zone, grade separation, and other quality of life improvements, and that the board approve the following members to the ad hoc board committee. Board member Contreras as chair, board member Hinsey as vice chair, and board members Bhat Patel and Desmond as active participants, members. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation. I open the floor for questions.
Thank you for that informative presentation, Lillian. Suhail, are there any public comments on this agenda item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're ending public registration to speak on this item. Timing's everything. This is an amazing opportunity for our cities and the county to come together, pursue a share of the historic funding now available, and to collaborate on quality of life improvements that stand to benefit scores of North County residents. I invite each of you and the county to strongly encourage staff representatives, especially from your respective planning or public works departments, to participate in the discussion and share local goals, objectives, and plans. Pardon the pun, but NCTD staff is already on board. Don't let the train pass you or your constituents by. In order for this committee to be successful, we must have an active participation from all key stakeholders. I totally approve the persons chosen for this committee, and I will open this up to any questions or comments, but I'd be happy to make the motion. Director Contreras.
Yes, so I just want to clarify, did you make a motion to approve?
I will allow you to make a motion to approve.
Okay, well, I just want to say I'm really grateful for the opportunity to chair this new ad hoc committee. As you know, our wonderful chair Edson explained, there's just a lot on the line, a lot of opportunity. And I look forward to being as aggressive as needed to ensure that we are able to utilize all the dollars on the table. And I look forward to working to advance our mission here at North County Transit District. With that, I would like to move to approve staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hinsey.
Thank you. Yeah, I will second that motion. And I too want to reiterate the importance of this, especially on behalf of so many Encinitas residents for whom the rail is a top priority for them. And the projects include crossings and quiet zones and pedestrian wayside horns. So I'm grateful that all of those individual things were called out, and to my colleague, Karina Contreras, for being willing to chair this. And I look forward to being the vice chair. I hope we don't waste any time, even though I'm probably going to be having a baby next week and I might not be able to attend the first meeting. But I have so much confidence in my colleagues, and also Lillian, who's a familiar face, and it's so great to see you, Lillian. And I just really look forward to the progress we're going to be able to make on behalf of our communities because of this initiative. So thank you.
Thank you for that enthusiastic second. Board Member Gasterland.
Yeah, I am in strong support of this. I want to say that up front, but I do have a couple of questions, really clarifying questions. So in North County jurisdictions, you know, we each and collectively have all sorts of grade separation issues, wishes for, you know, better crossings, more crossings, quiet zones. So does the city of San Diego. And, you know, they don't have a vote here, although they do have a sitting member. I'm not sure if the San Diego member is here. Would this committee be focused on the North County jurisdictions and, as far as the county goes, the northern part of the county? Or would it also be looking at city of San Diego needs?
Is that a question that Lillian can answer, or Matt, would you like to take that one?
We're actively working and looking at all of the grade crossings and other initiatives throughout, including the city of San Diego. We actually,
you sort of sound like you're speaking inside a fish tank. Can you?
Hello, am I still in the fish tank?
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Okay, so we are actively working, looking at both of our corridors, including grade crossings and other needs within the city of San Diego. Just for clarity, with the city of San Diego, we are working closely with them as part of the convention center and other related projects. We have a significant amount of working groups and outreach activities that are occurring. We have a phase 2 study with BNSF that's looking at activities down south with the focus towards mitigating some of the future impacts of increased train operations. So it's happening. All of those activities will be discussed at that committee and making sure everybody is aware. But we are right at this point, I think we really are seeing a lot of progress in terms of our cross collaboration with the city of San Diego. And so hopefully we can get that same level of cooperation and collaboration within North County.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I had I won't call it good fortune or bad fortune, the fortune to come home to the airport just as a freight train, you know, from the airport, just as a freight train was crossing. It took 10 to 15 minutes at 8:30 on a Friday evening. It was really quite astounding. So I'm sure the city, you know, I've read about all sorts of needs. So that brings me to my second question, and that's, you know, funds for doing these things. Again, if there's not a real distinction between North County needs and city of San Diego needs, there's so much need within the city of San Diego in terms of miles and disruption and number of people compared to each of us separately. I think this is a great committee to have, because this brings all of our jurisdictional needs together and really gives it weight. What funds are going to be behind this?
Well, there are a significant amount of funds that are going to be available through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That's part of what the communications we're going to be sharing with the committee in terms of grant opportunities that are going to be coming available. I know there is a couple of grant opportunities related to grade separation projects that are going to accept applications prior to the end of this year. And that's the whole notion of making sure, relative to what your phase of your project be, maybe it's engineering, maybe you have a shovel-ready project for construction, that we all try to line those activities up and see to what degree that we can collaborate. I could give people some example, like as we look at Sprinter double tracking, it may be the case that we may be able to leverage with our city or with the county and the state, for that matter, to leverage federal dollars to support goals that allow us to reduce and share costs in ways that if a city or a county were to pursue a project independently would not generate that level of grant activity. So the whole intent is to bring it together. I think the key focus is getting everyone aligned and at the table and ready to commit to advancing a project, because you can't advance a project by talking about it. You have to invest. We're making some investments. So we're funding, for example, a programmatic study of grade quiet zones on both the Escondido and the San Diego subdivision And we're going to do that just so that we can illustrate to the cities who don't have quiet zones the cost savings potential that we believe exists, that if we were to collaborate on a programmatic as compared to a one-by-one implementation of quiet zones. So what we're trying to do is to lead the way in showing and demonstrating that it's more effective to collaborate than go it alone.
Good, thank you.
Board Member Jenkins.
Yes, I love the idea of being able to leverage dollars. I think it's important, each of us, as we go to our next council meetings, that we bring this up publicly and discuss these opportunities. Anything that either Matt can do as the executive director, as a staff to staff discussion, or Jewel could do as the chair to get the word out, I think is also good. So can you maybe share, Matt, what might happen there on that part of it?
Yeah, I talked to two of my bosses, so I already have clear direction. So I will be communicating with the city managers. And so we have a prepared communication that will go out in the next couple of business days. And then the chair will be sending a communication out to all of the member jurisdictions, including the city of San Diego, that will capture her request for active participation and collaboration. And hopefully, just speaking for the chair, that these communities would come together to identify that they have priorities, identify what people would be available to support and what their level of commitment would be to advance projects.
And just to be clear, what you're hoping for, we have our four board members that will be the committee. What you're hoping for is that each of us get a staff person, each of the cities get a staff person on board also, or involved in the committee process.
Yes, I think that would just be an outstanding outcome, because at the end, it's just talking in the air if it's just NCTD. A lot of these grant applications will require either the city or the county to advance the grant application. There are some instances of transit projects where we can directly advocate for a project, but the importance of having collaboration and agreements to support projects is just absolutely important in this environment.
Thanks, Matt. Board Member Gasterland, I see your hands raised again.
Yeah, I want to raise another question or discussion topic, and that's prioritization. The grade separation part of this is really important. We know from the safety studies that we've all seen here that the vast majority of strikes between a train and a person in Oceanside, Carlsbad, Encinitas, and Del Mar are at the crossings. In Del Mar, it's at Coast Boulevard, for example. We also know that Solana Beach, which was able to leverage federal and state and local dollars and the train station, has had virtually none of these, over the same time period. So the grade separation may well be the most important thing to focus on, because that comes with quiet zone. That will just happen. So I want to attach a question to this, and that's, will this committee be looking at priorities, and is grade separation a priority in general? Thanks.
So I don't think my humble recommendation is the committee shouldn't prioritize at that level. There are going to be a multitude of issues, physical grade separations between roads and trains. It's an important activity, but it's also the most expensive activity. There may be the case, and I'll speak maybe for the city of Encinitas, they're frequent flyers in terms of email communicators with me, that it may be access safe and legal crossings as an activity could be their top priority based upon community feedback that they're hearing today. And we should be supportive and collaborative in trying to support them in those initiatives. In fact, when I discuss these issues with the senior leadership at the Federal Railroad Administration, they really weren't necessarily trying to separate all of those different activities in terms of priorities. All of them have safety benefits, and to the degree that different communities may have different goals, and projects are going to be evaluated themselves within specific grant requirement, grade requirements. For example, obviously a grade crossing project that has a higher level of vehicle miles, vehicle activity going across that, or more significant accident and incident rate is going to score higher compared to one that doesn't. So I don't think the committee needs to do that. I actually think as we get through the process, typically the best project rises, or the project that fits within a grant requirement rises. But I also say all projects tend to rise if there is a collaborative focus and a consensus scope that is put forth. I think, that's the key piece is developing a framework to advance the project.
Thank you for your question, Board Member Gasterlin. Thank you for your response, Matt. At this time, we have a motion by Contreras, second by Hensy. Could you please call the vote?
Vice Chair Patel.
Aye.
Board Member Gasterlin.
Yes.
Board Member Hensy.
Yes.
Board Member McNamara.
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez. Board Member Desmond. Board Member Jenkins.
Yes.
Board Chair Edson.
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Hensy, to approve establishment of an ad hoc board committee for quiet zones, grade separations, and other rail quality of life improvements, and to approve the following members to the ad hoc board committee: Karina Contreras as chair, Kelly Hensy as vice chair, Priya Patel as member, and Jim Desmond as member. Motion passes.
Thank you. And before we move on, I just wanted to, Board Member Desmond had a question. In the past, the PAF and MISPADA have often met immediately before or after board meetings, and he wondered if that might be possible in this case, because generally people, the board, reserve that kind of time for NCTD, and it would perhaps be an easier meeting to make and quorum to make. So,
Yes, Chair, we will work towards that. I will say we are working towards a meeting in August to get the ball rolling, and the board is scheduled to be dark in August, but we will try to make sure that we align subsequent meetings with the board meeting, ahead of the board meeting, to support maximum participation.
great. Thank you so much. I promised that I'd make that ask, so done. We do not have a regular board meeting in August, as Matt just mentioned. However, should we vote today to extend the virtual meetings, we will need to meet briefly in mid-August in order to continue meeting virtually in September. Laura Cote, Chief Administrative Officer, will review item 20 and provide additional information about timing. Laura?
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. So this final item on your agenda is asking you to consider the option of holding virtual meetings for the next 30 days per Assembly Bill 361, or to resume meetings in accordance with the Brown Act. Next slide, please. And as mentioned at prior board meetings, Governor Newsom signed AB 361 into law, and it is in effect until January 1st of 2024. This allows local agencies to hold meetings virtually so long as state or local officials have declared a state of emergency, or those same officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. The governor has removed many provisions of the current state emergency thus far, however, has yet to terminate it altogether. So I also would like to provide a quick update on our regional stats regarding COVID-19. We are continuing to see increases, and we've noted that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention did move San Diego County to its high risk level as of July 14th. The most recent data ending on the 19th of July from the CDC indicated that the county's overall testing positivity rate is now 16.75%. New hospital admissions are increasing at 22.9% over the last 7 days, and new COVID-19 cases are increasing by 12.3% over the last 7 days. I also like to provide an update on NCTV. The last time the board got together related to its special board meeting to extend the 30 days, I noted that our main offices were currently under an outbreak protocol. I unfortunately need to now report that we have 2 additional locations that have also joined that protocol. Generally, that means we have face coverings that are required at all times at these 3 locations. Next slide, please. So I'd like to every now and then offer some updates regarding legislation if there are any status updates. And at this time, I have 2 that I'd like to provide information on. The first is AB 1944, which included provisions that waive the current Brown Act requirement to identify the locations where members of the governing body are participating from. At this time, we have heard that this bill is on hold, so we're not expecting it to move forward. Next slide, please. However, the second bill that we have been tracking is still active. Essentially, when members come back in August, we do expect that the Senate will have the bill skip the Appropriations Committee process and go straight to the Senate floor. So it is possible that it could be passed and signed by the governor this year, would go in effect early next year. This bill would waive the requirement to identify the location of a remote participant, however, limits the ability of any one member of the governing body to participate remotely to no more than 3 months in a row. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the recommendation. Before you, there are 2 alternatives noted on this slide. First is adopt resolution number 2214, proclaiming a local emergency, re-ratifying the proclamation of a state of emergency, and reauthorizing remote teleconference meetings, including hybrid meetings of the legislative bodies of the North County Transit District in compliance with Assembly Bill 361. This would go into effect immediately tomorrow through August 20th. I wanted to note, as the chair also mentioned, a special board meeting. Should you adopt this first alternative, a special board meeting would then need to be scheduled for mid-August to discuss an extension of that proclamation that would then carry us into the next regular board meeting on the 15th of September. And then your second alternative to consider is to resume meetings in accordance with the Brown Act effective July 22nd, 2022. So that does conclude my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, Laura. I have a question. So should by some miracle the Omicron subvariants BA4 and BA5 fade away and not be replaced by another hyper-contagious strain, might the board have the opportunity to reverse course and either choose not to meet in mid-August, or if they do meet, opt out of extending remote teleconference meetings to September?
So I'm sorry, can you clarify your question?
Would the board have an opportunity if things are looking good in mid-August to simply not meet and allow things to go back to normal, or do we have to meet again in August regardless to make a decision one way or another?
I do understand your perspective. So at this point, if the board decides not to meet, then the next meeting would be under the Brown Act provisions. So the old Brown Act provisions, where if you were to be remote, this would require the agendas to be noted where individuals are participating from. So you can select not to meet at this time, and then that would be the next time that we would meet would be under the old Brown Act, the current Brown Act rules.
Okay, and that's not part of our motion. I was just a curiosity question as to, in mid-August, if things look a little different. I see board member Gasterlin's hand is raised.
Yeah, I have a comment and 2 questions. So the comment is what I've learned from my infectious disease colleagues at UCSD is that when you have a really high peak, it tends to come back down pretty quickly. And when you have a long trend with a long time to the peak, the mirror image is it doesn't fall quickly. It's a long time to come down. It's like a truism of infectious disease epidemiology. So this has been a slow, long climb this summer. So we may well be still asking this question in October. So that said, I'm wondering, I guess this is a question for Matt, for our Executive Director Tucker. How are the bus drivers doing? Do they feel safe? You know, there's more and more. Are they tending to mask? Is NCTD encouraging them and helping people understand? You know, are they masking at least when the buses are really, really crowded? What's happening?
Board Member Gasterlin, I'm going to allow this question, but I think it's a little off the topic of the agenda.
Well, okay, so the tie to the topic of the agenda is if others in the NCTD workforce, you know, we're the leaders, we're the board, we set a tone. You know, I'm wondering if our decision here might help others.
Okay, so we have communicated to our bus operators that we continue to recommend that they wear masks. I believe, you know, just a rough look from what I see, that probably is a 50-50 proposition in terms of what you see in terms of operators wearing masks. Obviously, with the decision of the mandate for requiring bus operators and air flights to have masks, people made different decisions based upon, you know, their own healthcare needs and assumptions of risk. So we're going to continue to ramp up the communication because we know our frontline employees are at higher risk, as well as the folks that work throughout our facilities and divisions. Same thing for our 810 Mission Avenue. So we're trying to put people in best possible position as we can. But with that said, the risk remains, and we continue to have higher rates than desired positivity tests.
Yeah. All right. Well, I continue to wear my mask, not just for me, but for others, especially since I had a sore throat last week and no voice this week. Still testing negative, but who knows?
So thank you, Board Member Gasterlin. So seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt resolution number 22-14 proclaiming a local emergency, re-ratifying the proclamation of a state of emergency, and reauthorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the North County Transit District in compliance with Assembly Bill 361 effective July 22nd, 2022 through August 20th, 2022. I almost made that in one breath, but
I'll second.
Thank you. So motion by Edson, second by Gasterlin. Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bat Patel,
Aye.
Board Member Gasterlin,
Aye.
Board Member Hinsey,
Yes.
Board Member McNamara,
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez, Board Member Desmond, Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Chair Edson,
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
And I beg everyone's pardon, but Suhail, I neglected to ask if there were any public comments on item 20.
There are none.
Okay. Obviously, we've ended public registration to speak on this item. Mr. Tucker, do you have anything to report?
Oh, yes. I was a little bit confused. I did want to mention with a level of clarity, and I'm going to see if I can share screen. Uh-oh, can't do it until Suhail stops. Okay. All right.
He shared.
I'm going to share screen, which could get me into trouble if I don't know how to stop sharing. I wanted to share with you all a little bit of information about the FRA grade crossing elimination program. I've sent out to all board members a link to this page. So the grant program is active and accepting applications. The applications are due in October. It's $573 million that is going to be made available for a variety of different projects, grade separation or closure, including the use of bridge embankment tunnel, track relocation. So lots of different activities are eligible under this grant program. So I wanted to make sure that you all got to see the FRA webpage. So you do have that link in your email to be able to study that and reach out to NCTD's team. Mary Dover's our government affairs officer, and she's more than willing to talk to you and give some feedback prior to us beginning the meetings about potential projects that you may want to advance based upon your level of readiness. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. And now before we go to our summer break, as I would like to think of it, I do want to just extend the offer to any board member who would like to meet with me to discuss any topic. Feel free to reach out to Sue Health. I will be traveling during that period of time on and off, primarily for business purposes, but would love to be able, and it's a better time to be able to have some of those one-on-one conversations that have been more difficult to have during the first half of this year. So with that, that completes my report. Madam Chair, back to you.
Well, thank you very much. Do any board members have anything to report? Seeing no hands raised, going once, going twice. I will just mention, as a result of the vote on item 20, although the board does not generally meet in August, as discussed earlier, a special board meeting will be scheduled for mid-August to consider an extension of the resolution that would allow for virtual and hybrid board meetings in accordance with AB 361. If approved in mid-August, the extension would then be in effect until the September 15th, 2022 regular board meeting. Since the mid-August special meeting date has yet to be set, our next meeting is the regular board meeting on September 15th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Happy summer break, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Bye, take care.
Bye-bye. Enjoy August.